Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beastly Talks. As always, I'm your host, Ian Helling, and I didn't get a podcast out last week. Honestly, I'm kind of drowning a little bit with everything, just life changes and getting ready to go to Norway and everything. So I apologize for that. But today I lined up 4 really good chats with some great trainers, and they'll all be coming out while I'm overseas in Europe from the 5th till the 27th of June. Got some really cool chats with some people from all over the world, from Scotland to Perth to California. And obviously, there's going to be some recurring guests as well, someone you all know really well. So stay tuned for all of those chats. But yeah, there is a hell of a lot going on at the moment, and I am trying my best to keep up with everything. But after I get back from Europe, I'll probably go back to doing the podcast like every 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. It depends on it. It's a lot of work, and I'm trying to keep it up as best as I can. But yeah, it has been a bit rough recently. But if you're in Melbourne, or if you're in Australia and not in Melbourne and want to travel, don't forget about the reactivity workshop with Ben Geurts and Kaizen K9 coming up on the 25th and the 26th of July. You can book your spot now. We still got room for some more working spots, so you can get in touch if you think you have a dog that is suitable for a working spot. But yeah, jump onto beautifulbeasts.com.au/events, and you can read all about it there. You can book your ticket there. And if you have any questions, you can always just contact me either on social media or email me through my website. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I am feeling pretty despondent at the moment, and a bit angry as well on top of everything. So how long ago is this? Is it 5, 6 months ago? Suddenly, the New South Wales government proposed a lot of changes to an Animal Welfare Act, and included in that was, well, there was a bunch of stuff, but relating to dogs, it was basically increased penalties for leaving a dog in a car on a hot day, which I am all for. But then it's also, of course, this nonsense with the prong collar ban, which I made an episode on quite a while ago, encouraging people to put in their own submission against the ban. Because one thing that we do know is that bans do not improve welfare. In fact, it makes criminals of people who are currently living a good life with their dogs, and it's fucking despicable. But I put in a big submission. I got an email yesterday saying that basically, thank you for your interest, but we don't give a shit, because we have now put in the proposal. We're going to push this through. And they claim to have had more than 7,000 submissions. Now, it took me a very long time, a lot of searching and Googling and having AIs lie to me and all kinds of stuff before I actually found the submission page. That was buried deep on the New South Wales government website. Now, when I actually did find it, though, it was 320-ish submissions, I think. So I don't know where they got this number of 7,000 from. I presume they count everyone that works at the RSPCA. In Australia, there's a lot of groups that put in a submission, and the Australian Veterinary Association, same bullshit lies that they always come up with, that positive reinforcement can fix anything and it's great and no one should use anything else. The RSPCA just fucking lie about everything, so don't even give a shit about their opinions. But yeah, no substantial evidence to be shown anyway. A lot of very emotional language. They're kind of like just sitting there and whining and crying and patting themselves on their own shoulders for thinking they're doing something good. But yeah, it looks like prong collars are going to disappear in New South Wales. Again, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'd be very surprised if anything changed now. And there's also ridiculous language in this new legislation. And again, I don't do sports at all. I'll talk about why in a minute. But one of the things that they have changed in the legislation, and I'm paraphrasing this because I haven't got it in front of me, but basically they want to make it illegal for any person to train an animal to fight another animal or human being. Now, that sounds great because the first thing that pops into my head is obviously dogfighting rings, and we want to get rid of that bullshit. 100%. We want to get rid of that. Um, However, that does not account for things like sports. Now, again, I'm not into sports at all, but sports like IGP, which is former Schutzen, blah, 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 which requires heavy levels of obedience and a lot of control. And then the dog is then sent to bite a person or what is called a decoy in a suit. Now, that is not mentioned at all. So, this could literally be a blanket ban on anything that is considered to be fighting with a dog, which is just so poorly written, poorly researched, and it's insanity. Like people who know nothing about dogs and dog training are writing legislation. I presume they are chatting to someone, and I presume they're chatting to force-free people who also don't know how to train dogs to save their own fucking life, and they're making sweeping broad legislation based on all of this, and it's fucking bullshit, and it is gonna destroy, uh, just dogs and dog training in general, and, yeah, like, no matter how much we fight against it, it's funny because I would say the vast majority of balance trainers are so much better than force-free trainers at training dogs. And yet we're losing all the time. Every battle we're losing. Why is that? It's because we're out fucking training dogs and not sitting and spewing hatred on social media. I know I'm spewing some hatred now, but I'm just fucking sick of it. And yeah, I mean, they're winning. There's no getting around that, and it's because they are so bad at training dogs that they have all the time in the world to talk shit about people who are in fact out there training dogs like myself. So yeah, I'm a bit beaten and broken at the moment, and I know this is a bit of a shit intro to the podcast, but we are going to talk about something cool and something useful, and I look forward to get into that. But I just when I got that email yesterday, I was very pissed off, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Um, but yeah, at this rate, I don't know if I'll be training dogs in 5 years' time, but I guess we'll see. All right, so a few weeks back, I posted a video of a dog that I'd worked with. It's a young Kelpie, and the video basically is just this dog sitting on a placeboard in the middle of a busy car parking spot. And I'm walking around, I'm adding a little bit of distraction to it, distance and duration. And then I repeat the place command and I come back and I reward the dog for sitting on place. And it's pretty uneventful video, but I wrote a little caption to kind of explain what I was doing with it all. And then some keyboard warrior jumps on and has a go at me, which is what always happens. And I'll read the messages out to you. But this person's comments were so dumb and so self-righteous that I decided to do a whole fucking podcast on how I use what we call markers. And also, at the same time, kind of encouraging people to shut the fuck up a little bit. Whether you talk too much to your dog, whether you're just blabbering shit on social media, doesn't really matter. How about we shut up and train dogs for a bit? How do we all feel about that? Fuck me. Anyways, let's get stuck into it. All right. So I've got the comment thread in front of me here, and yeah, basically what I was saying was these people are with another trainer, and the other trainer said we don't use treats, that's bribery, and just slapped the halty on the dog and started like yanking and cranking the dog. Unfortunately, this is still happening in this day and age, and still people think that's what we do as balance trainers, which is absolutely not the case. But yeah, so like I said before, basically what happens is it's a dog sitting on a play sport. I start moving away from the dog. I say place, and I walk back to the dog and I reward them. Now, someone then jumped on and said, you need to mark the behavior, not what the dog is doing. The dog is already on place. Okay. So I'm going to explain why I use the command itself as a continuation marker. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, basically someone else jumped on and said, "Do you mean that the action of getting onto the bed is what should be marked rather than the action of the dog laying on the bed? What I see happening here is that the dog is being rewarded for remaining in place, place meaning staying on its bed rather than the action of getting onto the bed and building duration, etc." Now, Beck's a very clever girl. So yeah, she jumped to my defense there. Now, I didn't see this comment for a long time, and so when I replied, it was like a week later or something, I think. But yeah, the person then goes on to say, yes, the action of getting on plays, and then you use a continuation marker like, yes, when I have no food on me, I presume, I say good, and he gets praised. And when I say free dog, the dog can get off and do whatever he's doing. And then I say place, dog goes to place, good. So what I jumped on and said is, so you use good as a continuation marker, which is very common. I think it's obsolete. My reward marker, yes, is terminal. And I'm not going to read through my whole comment. You can jump on and see this later. But this is just why I'm doing a podcast on markers. So basically, I said, I don't agree with you. And then he came back with, I don't care how you do it. We all have a bit of a different system. Mine is really aimed at sport dogs. With clients, I only use a terminal marker and a no marker, or else you lose the client. My dog knows 10 markers or so. No dog, most dogs don't really need that much. All right, so I thought it was funny because he goes, you're doing it wrong. And then when I explained what I was doing, he immediately went, I don't care how you do it. I do it differently. And this social media is just a megaphone for morons. Unfortunately, that's why I haven't really been using it much the last few months because I've just had enough of it. But I read all of that and then I thought, okay, why don't I do a podcast on markers? What does it mean? What do we use them for? What are the different types of markers? And why do I do things the way that I do and not the common way? So that's what I want to get stuck into today. So let's start off with understanding what markers are. So a marker is a sound or a signal, whether that's tactile, visual, whatever it may be, but it's a clear signal to the dog that marks a particular point in time or directs them to a particular reward or even a punishment. So the markers are a signal to the dog that is created to bridge the time between a behavior has happened and whether or not a reinforcer or a punisher is then given to the dog. Now, it does go a little bit further than that, which I'll talk about because we have things like, start and finish cues, markers as well. But yeah, essentially, what happens if my dog is 15 meters away from me and he does a really nice sit, for example. And I want to see more of a sit. And so now, if I want to reward that, According to current science, I have about 2 seconds to get all the way over to him, 15 meters away, and shove some food in his face, or give him a pat, or tell him, good boy, whatever it is that he finds reinforcing. That's going to encourage that behavior to happen more frequently. Now, that's going to be really difficult unless you're the actual Flash and you can just bolt over there and go like, boom. So, what we do when we're using marker systems is we're trying to teach the dog a signal that we can give from a distance that will give the dog the feeling of being rewarded and bridge the time between when the behavior happened and when I can actually get up to the dog to give them their reinforcer, be that food, be that a toy, be that a pat or a praise, right? And again, it works for punishment as well. So give a signal, say, hey, you made a mistake. I can't have you make that mistake anymore. A punishment will follow. So I know this sounds a little bit complicated, but hopefully it will make more sense as we get stuck into it. But markers to me are different from commands, right? So a command, say sit or drop or place, whatever command you've trained your dog to understand, that activates the dog into a behavior, right? So I say sit, my dog puts his bum on the ground. I can then give my marker yes to indicate that the dog did the right thing because of what he did, and then I can give him the reinforcer. Now, if I want to capture my dog doing something, so we talk about capturing, which is basically just watching the dog. And when they do something we like or we don't like, we then mark that point in time and say, hey, that was cool. I want you to do that more often. Or no, I can't have you do that anymore. Right. And so now, without even luring the dog, without putting them into any form of position, we can set boundaries. We can encourage cool behaviors by simply saying yes and no, or whatever marker it is that you're using. So yeah, it's basically marking a point in time where the dog did something we either like or don't like, so that we can bridge the time between when the behavior happened and the consequence, whether that is reinforcement or whether that is punishment. In a very simple manner, that is how I look at markers and marker systems. Now, it does get more complicated than that. But first, let's talk about classical conditioning. Now, I know I've talked about classical conditioning before and kind of broken down what that means, but it's very important to kind of reiterate that here, because a lot of what we do is straight up classical conditioning, meaning it's not operant in the sense that we're making the dog do behaviors and then rewarding them, right? This is basically the dog deciding to do something and we telling them whether we liked it or not. And so classical conditioning is basically taking something that means nothing to the dog and ascribing a value to it. So I'm not going to use the fancy terms, but dogs have a natural response to food, right? So we'll do the clicker example, because that is a very common one and it's a very simple one, very easy to understand. So a clicker is a plastic shape that has a metal plate inside of it, and when you press a button, it makes a sharp metal clicking sound. That's literally what a clicker is. Now, the first time a dog hears a clicker, so you press that button, it hears the click, it's quite a sharp sound, so they might look around a little bit, but the click itself holds no value to the dog. It actually means nothing to the dog. And so what we need to do is we need to use classical conditioning to pair the clicker with something salient, something that matters to the dog. And the two responses are going to be connected together. So dogs like food. All dogs, look, unless a dog is mentally or physically unhealthy, they're not going to starve themselves. They're going to have some interest in food. Now, there are dogs that have low food drive, absolutely. But at the end of the dog, no dog's going to, at the end of the day, no dog's going to starve themselves, right? They are going to eat to stay alive. And so that is what we call an unconditioned stimulus. So basically food doesn't need to be conditioned because they understand from birth that nutrients have to go into my body. That's how I stay alive. So, when we present the dog with food, we get what we call an unconditioned response. I said I wasn't going to go into the terminology, and now I'm doing it. So, I apologize. Apologies for that, but let's just go through real quick. So now, when I present the dog with a yummy treat or a bone or something that is salient, meaning it means something good to the dog, what we do get is an unconditioned response. And in this case, that is usually referred to as drooling, right? So the dog sees food, drooling, saliva prepares the dog to chew that food, to swallow that food, and to begin the digestive process. And all of this is completely out of your control, right? So now I click the button, nothing happens, but I present the dog with food. The dog has a natural response to the food that's put in front of it. Now, what I can do at this point is I can start pairing the two together. So now what I do is I click, and then within 2 to 3 seconds, right? And the timing here is very different, but the important thing is that the food comes after the click, not at the same time. Because if it happens at the same time, the dog's going to ignore the click and is just going to focus on the food. But now what I do is I click, and 2 seconds later, I present the dog with a handful of food or a yummy treat. Now, the more times I do this, the more the connection between the clicker and the food being presented gets paired together. That is the conditioning side of things. So now we'll go click, food, click, food, click, food. And before long, the dog is going to hear the click and he's going to look at you immediately because he's expecting food to happen. Now we have the clicker being a conditioned stimulus, meaning it meant nothing. We paired it with something that means a lot to the dog. We paired it many enough times for the dog to go, oh, when I hear that click, that means food's coming. And so now what happens is the dog starts salivating at the sound of the click, not the presentation of the food. That's how classical conditioning works. You basically take something that means nothing, you pair it with something that does mean something, and over time, the thing that meant nothing ends up meaning the same thing as the thing that we're pairing it together with. Hopefully, that makes sense. Now, I like to use the example of learning a new language, because learning a new language is basically just classical conditioning. You get told a word that you've never heard before, and then a second later, you get told the translation into a language that you understand. You hear the unfamiliar word followed by the familiar word many enough times, and you make the connection, or they must mean the same thing. That's pretty much what this is. And again, marker systems is all about creating a language to the dog that is very simple to understand, very precise, and very easy for the dog to follow. Now, one of my pet peeves is people fucking talk to their dog too much. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before, but people, um, they just blabber on to their dogs, right? It's funny. Like I've gone to clients where they've had some behavioral issues, and I've said, "So, what does the dog actually know? What kind of training have you done?" And I've had people say to me, "Oh, my dog knows how to sit," and I say, "Okay, great, show me." Now, what happens is the person then starts blabbering. It goes, "Okay, Fido, sit, sit. No, no, sit. No, stop. No, come here. No, Fido, sit. Stop. Stop. Stop what you do. No, don't jump. No, 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 come up. Not on the couch. Back here. Sit. Sit. Bum on the ground. Sit." Does the dog sit? No, because nothing's clear, right? It means nothing to the dog. Sure, when there's no distraction, when I'm not there, the dog might sit just out of sheer behavior to see, hey, if I put my bum on the ground, we'll see if something good happens or not. But again, that is not effective training. And the fact that the person continues to talk and talk and talk means they become background noise. So basically, one of the things that I say to a lot of my clients is, you need to shut the fuck up. Okay, you need to stop talking so much and you not need to start talking to the dog more clearly, right? And we can do a little experiment right here, right now. Okay. To the listener, wherever you are, wherever you may be, I'm going to give you some very simple instructions now. Very simple, shouldn't be hard to follow at all. I'm not going to use too many words, but I basically want you to do exactly what I tell you to. Okay, so here we go. Jeg vil at du skal løfte høyre hånda og ta deg på toppen av hodet. Det er det eneste jeg vil at du skal gjøre. Okay. Now, I know that I've got a few listeners in Norway. Now, they may actually have completed the task that I gave them, which was very simple. Lift your right hand, put it on top of your head. That's it. That's all that I asked you to do. However, to all my non-Norwegian speaking friends and listeners, how long did it take you to tune out when I started speaking Norwegian? I'm guessing there was a moment of confusion, a couple of seconds where you go like, is he actually saying stuff? And then you tune out. Why? Because you can't understand what I'm saying, because it hasn't been paired together. This is what most people sound like to their dogs when they ramble on. They just become background noise that gives no information, does not help the dog in any way, form, or shape. And it's important that you just shut up and start marking the dog's behavior instead of trying to tell them what to do. All right, I hope you like that little thought experiment through this internet radio that we're all having a connection with at this point in time. But let's get stuck into actual markers and how we use them, how they work, how they operate, what the different types of markers are. And I'm going to start with the very basic markers. So the basic markers is basically, yes, you've done the right thing. No, you've done the wrong thing. That's it. If your dog understands yes and no, you effectively have a complete communication system. Because now every time your dog does something, you can say, yes, I like it when you do that, do it more often, and good things will happen. And when they do something you don't like, you can say no and do something they don't like, and that behavior is going to lessen over time. So I guess another important thing to point out here is that words, the actual words or sounds that you use, they don't matter, right? You can call it whatever you want. Now, what I would want a marker to be, though, is short, sharp, and easy for the dog to understand. That's why the most common things are a click, because the click is a very distinctive sound that the dog can easily distinguish from other things. But then further to that, we also have yes, yep, chip, right? So there are many different sounds that you can use, but the whole point of this is we want to keep them short, we want to keep them snappy, and we want to keep them a little bit different from average everyday talk. We want it to be a clear sound that just immediately goes to the dog, hey, this means something to you. So again, you can call it whatever you want, but the shorter and sharper it is, the easier it is for your dog to understand. So a reward marker, basically a sound or a signal that determines a point in time where the dog has done something correctly and we want them to do more of it, is what we call a reward marker. And that, again, that's when most people use the click, they use the yes, they use the yip, they use the chip, right? Short, sharp, nice, and clean. Then on the other end, we have a punishment marker, right? So a punishment marker is, I use no, because no means, hey, you made a mistake, buddy. An unpleasant experience is going to follow because I need you to do that thing less. Now, the interesting thing here is how we begin loading markers. So again, the word yes or chip. means nothing to the dog until it's paired with something. So in the clicker example, through classical conditioning, what we do is we click food, click food, and before long the dog goes, okay, I get this. Click means food's coming. That's a cool thing. I like that. And so now, the more I hear the click, the more excited I'm going to get. Now, with a punishment marker, things are a little bit different because how do we condition a dog to understand a punishment marker? Well, imagine if my dog is doing nothing. He's just kind of walking around, and what I would have to do to condition the punishment marker not on the job, so to speak, is while my dog's not making mistakes, I'd have to just like say no and then correct him on the leash or stim him on the electric collar, right? That would be so unfair because the dog isn't doing anything wrong, right? He's just doing his own thing, not problematic behavior. And so for me to then start just correcting the dog randomly, that would be so unfair. So a punishment marker is usually conditioned on the job. What we mean by that is when we're in training, we start by conditioning the reinforcer because saying yes and giving food, that's not really a problem, right? The dog just learns quickly, oh, cool. This means we're doing stuff together, right? And so now I can start teaching behaviors. And now every time I teach the dog to sit, right? Every time his bum hits the ground, I say yes and I give him some food. Now, when the dog has a good understanding of that and he begins to break behavior, which most dogs are going to do, they're going to get distracted, they're going to get bored in the training if you train for too long, whatever it may be. You ask the dog to sit, he puts his bum on the ground, and then he goes like, no, I'm just going to get up and walk over here and pee on this dead possum over here in the corner. That's when we say no and follow up with the correction. Now, conditioning a punishment marker, I find takes much less time than conditioning a reinforcement marker because, a reward marker. Because hearing a click and getting a few treats, sure, they learn over time. But again, if you are going to administer a punishment to a dog, I want to administer that punishment with enough intensity that the dog goes, I want that to never happen again. And the reason for that is the more clear I am in my punishment, the less I'm going to have to use punishment because the dog goes, oh, I would like for that to never happen again. So now I say, sit to my dog. My dog sits and then bounces up again. And I pop the leash upwards after saying the word no. Now, very quickly, the dog goes like, oh, that sound is important because that means something unpleasant is going to happen afterwards. Now, it doesn't take them long to realize that the word no means a punishment will follow. And before long, the word no becomes the punishment itself. Right, that's where I'm at with my little boy Gunnar at the moment, who I am not doing enough training with at all. It's just I am so overwhelmed by life in general that I'm just trying to kind of keep him happy and not be a complete psychopath. And I'm trying to keep my own head above water. But essentially, if I send him out now to go to the toilet or something, and then I call him back, now he will come running. I'll see him trotting across from, the backyard. And then suddenly he stops and he veers off because he wants to go and sniff something. Now that means he has not completed the recall, which I know that he knows. I know he knows come means come all the way back to me, but he got distracted. And so without him wearing a leash, without him wearing an electric collar, I can simply say the word no, and he immediately comes all the way back to me. So he realizes that the word no means you failed the task that I gave you, which is to come running back to me. And you have to complete that task in order to avoid future punishments. And again, this is just basic training. But now we have something that tells the dog, you did the right thing. I want you to do more of it. And we have a sound or a signal that means to the dog, you did the wrong thing. I need you to do less of that. And that is genuinely, for most pet owners, a complete communication system that you're not really going to use. Well, you're not really going to need much more than that. Now, when it gets into more complicated types of training, then we need to expand our communication system a little bit further by adding some more different types of markers. All right, so now we've been through the basic markers, yes and no. Now I want to continue on by talking about specific reward markers. And what specific reward markers is when we take a step up into our positive reinforcement based training, and I want to be able to tell my dog to take different types of reinforcer. Now, again, for most people, this isn't going to be super important, but if you have a very high drive dog like a Malinois or something like that, this can actually be really useful because, I'll t- look, my boy Agna, my 5-year-old Malinois, he he is so toy driven, so prey driven that he would happily go 2 weeks without food if he got to play as much tug as he wanted to, right? Because he will always take that. He will always take the tug over food any time of day. But in order to reward him in a low state of arousal, I need him to learn that, hey, when I say a specific thing, I need you to take the food and not fixate on the toy so much. So what this helps us do is train in lower states of arousal, but it also teaches a little bit of impulse control around high arousal prey objects such as tug toys or balls, whatever it may be. So that I kind of have three reward, like specific reward markers that I use with him. So I use snack. Snack means you have to take the food that I'm offering you. Even if I'm holding out a tug toy and a handful of food at the same time, if I say snack, you got to take the food. I then have get it. Get it is just my cue to get whatever toy you are most interested in. So if I have 3 tugs and a couple of different balls lying on the ground and I say, "Get it," he goes to grab whatever thing he wants the most. Now, I can also use this if I'm just using one thing, whether I ask him to get it, come up to me and bite the tug toy, or run away from me and grab the toy that I threw. Get it is just go and grab the object wherever it may be that I have told you to get, or that we are currently training with. Then I also use Krieg, which is the German word for war. Now, Krieg means go to another person and fight with them. So if I'm doing some obedience training and I have some helpers, I might have 2 people, one standing with a ball, one standing with a tug toy. Now we are doing our obedience training, and then I will point at one of the people and I will say Krieg. That means run to that person and fight them over whatever toy that they have. Right, so that's a reward away from me. It's oh god, now I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head, but the internal and external reinforcer, I think, but I haven't actually got the details on that, so I'm not gonna go into that right now. But basically, reward into me, right? Take food from my hand or get your toy, whether that's in my hands or away from me. If it's away from me, you go and get it, and then you bring it back to me, and then we play tug. But Krieg is you gotta go somewhere else and fight with someone else over the toy, not me. Alright. Then we have what we call a no reward marker. So a no reward marker is different from a punishment marker because a no reward marker is basically telling the dog, hey, you've put yourself on the wrong path. You're about to make a mistake. I'm going to give you a warning. If you decide to continue on down this track that you've currently put yourself on, then that's going to lead to a no and then followed by a punishment. right? And so the no reward marker, most people actually use this without even thinking, and they use right? Just two sharp little to try and interrupt the dog's train of thought or path that they're currently heading down. Now, in many cases, it's enough to just say pretty loud to a puppy, and they're gonna go like, "Oh, wow." They're gonna snap out of whatever they're thinking on, whatever they're thinking about, and they're gonna direct their attention to you, at which point you can say yes, and they will come running to you, and then you can pat them, praise them, reinforce them in any way that you see fit, right? But again, the is or the no reward marker. I'm sure there are other ones. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but I'm sure people have some very specific no reward markers as well. But most people actually teach the non reward marker quite intuitively because they're like, oh, your head's tilted and your mouth is open and you're looking at my favorite chair in the house. I have a feeling I know exactly what's going to happen. You're going to run up and you're going to put teeth on that chair and you're going to damage it. As we just go, no, don't do that. And if you have a young puppy, most cases they're going to respond pretty quickly to that. If you have an older, I say, rescue dog or something, you might have to get a little bit physical with it, whether that's having a drag line on the dog so you can step on the leash and block them from getting to that thing. But with a puppy, in most cases, you can just go and they go, "Whoa, wow, that's a weird sound. I'm going to stop what I'm doing to try and go and investigate." Now they look at you, you go, "Puppy, puppy," right? So you encourage them over to you, and what you've done is you've taught the dog, "Hey, you're doing the wrong thing. I'm going to give you a warning. I'm going to give you an opportunity to stop what you're doing and then change it by instead coming back to me or biting a toy instead of my favorite chair leg. And you'll avoid the punishment altogether." Now, it's important to understand still that any form of pressure or punishment that we use in our training, the whole purpose of using those things is to teach the dog to avoid experiencing it again in the future, right? That's what we call avoidance training. You avoid being punished by getting a warning, and you have the opportunity to change what you're doing, and you're working life out pretty good. So yeah, that's a no reward marker. Simply a warning to the dog. Now, the next thing that I teach is a release marker. So, the way that I do things is a little bit different from how a lot of people do things because I use, and I forgot to say this, but I use my reward marker, yes, as what we call a terminal marker. Meaning, when I say yes, that means job complete. You can come running back to me for your reward. Now, I also then teach a release marker. And this basically releases the dog from the behavior, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a reinforcer at the end of it. So, a release marker is, hey, job complete. You can go do whatever you want, but you're not getting food from me. You're not getting to play tug with me at this point in time. And so, this is when we start fading out food and other reinforcers in our training because we always want to get to a point where we don't have to walk with treats every time we go anywhere or want to do anything. We want the dog to find some value in doing the work in and of itself. And so the release marker simply releases the dog from the command that they are currently under. Now, a lot of people use the word stay or wait. That was very popular some, I think, about 10, 15 years ago. But then we kind of realized what's the point of using those? Because when I say sit to my dog, that means sit until I either tell you to do something else or I release you from the sit. So by me saying sit, stay, that doesn't actually add any more information to the dog. In fact, it means I have to teach the dog another word. So now I'm going to start talking about duration markers because a release marker and a duration marker kind of works together to teach the dog to stay in position for longer. So again, releases dog from the position. We don't use the word stay. Don't say wait. There's no point. If you train the dog properly, you don't need these words. So what is a duration marker? Well, a duration marker is a marker that indicates to the dog, hey, I'm going to need you to do this for a bit longer. So the yes for me means you're free to go. Come get a treat or a pat or a game of tug with me. There's reinforcement involved now when I say yes. Then we have the release marker, which means, and I should say I use break or free. Those are the two most common ones. A lot of people use okay. I would recommend not doing that because I can tell you I say okay many times a day. I very rarely say free or break specifically when I'm doing something with my dogs. So I would stay away from that. You don't have to, again, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it pencil and fucking lamp, right? It doesn't matter. But teaching a dog markers, which are words that you're going to use a lot in everyday speech, is not ideal. Because if you want the dog to stay somewhere, so you send them to place, for example, and you're on the phone, you go, okay. While you're talking to your friend or your boss or whatever, the dog hears that and goes like, oh shit, I'm free to go, right? Now you have a person on the phone and you have a dog that you have to try and catch to put back on place. That's why I don't like using everyday words. I like using more unusual words. Right. Not that free and break is unusual, but again, it's not something I very often use in general conversation. So then on to the duration marker. Now, this is where a lot of people use good or stay, right? So essentially, a duration marker is the purpose of a duration marker is to build up duration in a specific behavior. So when my dog knows how to conduct a behavior, he knows how to go to place, for example, right? Send my dog to place. Now I want to start moving away from place and encourage the dog to stay on place, even if I'm walking away or even if I'm distracting them with a toy, whatever it may be. And so that's where we need another sound to say, hey, you're doing the right thing, but I'm going to need you to continue doing it. Now, this is where the arguments, well, the social media conversation, if you will, started with this other guy because I used the command as a continuation marker. Sorry, my head's all over the place. So a duration marker and a continuation marker are the same thing. They're just two different words. I need you to continue doing what you're doing for longer. That's it. And I tend to say duration marker because I'm building up duration in the behavior, but a continuation marker is the exact same thing. Hey, continue doing what you're doing. I'm getting my words all mixed up here. This is what stress does to you, fucks with your head. And yeah, hopefully this is all making sense and hopefully I'm not rambling too much. But yeah, so back to the duration marker. This is where I repeat the command. Because why? If my dog is doing something that I've trained them to do, why do I need to add another word to say, hey, I need you to do it for longer? So I use the command Platz. That's my place command. Basically, go away, sit on your bed. And then I walk up and I reward my dog with food. This is after I've trained it with just luring them onto it, saying yes, and giving them hundreds of treats, right? So now I can send my dog away from a couple of meters away. I say Platz, he runs and jumps on his place board. I walk up and I give him a treat. Now I start moving away. Now, if the dog remains on that place board, what I do is every 2 to 5 to 10 seconds, depending on where we are in the training, I walk back to the dog. I repeat the command, Platz, and I give them another treat. So what I'm doing now is I'm reminding the dog, yeah, you are doing the right thing, but I need you to continue doing it. To me, there's no point in introducing another word there because the dog goes like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. And because my yes or my click is terminal, meaning you're free to get off now, I just continue with the actual mm, like command that the dog's been taught. Like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. Just keep it going, buddy. You're doing good. And then as we get deeper into our training, I go away from the yes and I start replacing it with a release marker, which is break in my case. And now we can start fading out the food. Dog just goes like, oh, I just got to do this thing until the big man says break. And then I'm free to go and sniff and pee on stuff, which is, the intrinsic reinforcement that the dog gets without external input from us. All right. Finally, we want to talk about the start and the finish marker. So, this is one that a lot of people forget about, but it is super important, especially if you have a bit of a high drive, intense, powerful dog. I want to make it very clear to the dog that, hey, I'm opening a window of opportunity. And you can look up J. Jack's window theory on this. Not 100% the same, but it's linked to the same thing. But when I give my start cue or start marker to the dog, that means, hey, we're about to do something. Bring me your A game. You're going to get something good out of it. Right? And then we have at the end of it the finish marker, which means, hey, we've finished all of our exercising, all of our training. Whatever you do now, I'm not going to give you another reinforcer because I've closed the window that I previously opened. So a lot of people just use the words start and finish. Now I use activate. That's my start cue. Like activate yourself, bring me your A game because we're gonna have some fun together. And then after the training is complete, my finish marker then becomes game over. Game over means every toy that we've used, all the food that I had, it all gets picked up, it gets locked away. There's no more opportunity for you to earn reinforcement. So just power down, switch off, go relax. So yeah, activate for me, game over means finish the task. But call it start and finish, call it begin and end, doesn't really matter. But when you say it does matter. So when I can pick up a bunch of toys, I can pick up some food, I can walk out with Agner. I can't do this with Gunnar yet because he hasn't quite worked out the difference yet. But with Agner, I can walk out with all my toys and all my food, and he just stands there and looks at me, right? But the second I say the word activate, his whole body tenses and he starts barking at me because he goes, okay, the window's open. I have to give you as much power as possible. And for him, that means like punching into me and barking at me like, hey, make me do stuff. Right. But again, he's a particularly intense dog. So a little bit different from your average pet dog. But again, whatever the dog does, we want them to get excited about the start cue. Like, hey, we are doing fun shit now, and it's going to be highly reinforcing. It's going to be very intense. And then we're going to finish it all off when we are done, basically. So walk out, give the cue. And in the beginning, because I raised Agno with a clicker, like I don't really use the clicker anymore with him. But what I started doing is I said activate loud and clear, and I would click my clicker 3-4 times in quick succession because that means here comes the big reward. And so before long, classical conditioning takes place. He hears the word activate. That's the same as hearing 3 clicks on the clicker. And he goes, fucking bring your A game. All right, let's have a good time. And again, with finish cue, when you give your end cue or finish cue, take away all the toys. Put them in a crate, tether them, whatever it may be, make them understand there's no more opportunity for progression or for reinforcement. We are done. It's over. And when they understand those two, you're going to have a dog that's going to learn to power down much more quickly. And by power down, I should say learns to switch off, learns to not be trapped in a high state of drive and arousal all the time. Because that's an issue that a lot of people have. They have dogs just pacing around the house 24/7, drooling, bringing them toys because they always think there's an opportunity. So make your start and finish markers clear from the dog is a puppy. It is gonna fucking make your life so much easier. I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. Now I'll touch on one other thing real quick as well. This is probably more for the dog trainers and the dog training maybe students out there. But as a trainer who often have dogs with me and do training with clients, I use different markers for my dogs than I teach my clients. Why? Because I don't want a client saying something and my dog thinking it's free to go and do something. Right. So where I teach start and finish, I use activate and game over. Where I teach yes is probably the only one. Yes and no are probably the only ones that I overlap. But whenever I have a client say yes to their dog, my dogs are usually sitting on a place board. They know that I'm not paying attention to them. Also, I've taught them a different release command. So to clients, I will teach free or okay. Again, I'm not a huge fan of okay, but a lot of people have inadvertently already taught the dog that, so we can continue on with it. But that's why I need to have a different one. Because if Agner is sitting on a place board and I'm working with a dog aggressive dog, it is important that when I say free, he doesn't think, okay, now I'm free to run up to you and we play and we do something together. Right. Because when he's released from his place board, normally what he does is he comes straight up to me to go like, hey, are we still doing stuff or can I just go and do dog stuff? Right. And that would be a disaster. If he's sitting on place, I'm working with this dog that has a bite history on other dogs. I say free and Agner jumps off. Well, you can see where this is going, right? So try and teach different commands to your client than you teach your own dogs, because that is going to help you in your training, is going to eliminate any form of confusion. And again, I think I guess this is a good point. Like a lot of, like the majority of police and military dogs are trained in German. Why is that? Well, it is a pretty strong and commanding language. So it is easier to shout Platz than it is to say place, for example, right? It just holds a bit more weight and power to it. But also, if you're sending a dog against someone to whether that's threaten them or bite them in a dangerous situation, the last thing you want is for the perpetrator to yell command at your dog. Apologies. Had to cough there real quick. But the last thing you want is for your dog running towards someone and then yelling drop, and the dog stops his pursuit and lies down. This is why you want to train them in a language that the person or even the other dogs do not understand, because that means you can communicate with them on a whole different level, even in a public setting. So just a little tip for all the ones who are getting into market training or who works with other people's dogs. It's really good to have different markers for your own dogs than you have for your clients' dogs. All right, let's do a quick summary. So we have our basic markers, which is our reward marker and our punishment marker. Again, I use yes and click, and I use no. Like I was saying before, you can call them whatever you want, but try and keep them short and sharp. Makes it so much easier for the dog to understand. I then use some specific reward markers, snack, get it, or Krieg, which means, hey, you got to take food. Hey, you got to take the toy from me. Hey, you got to go to someone else to take the toy from them. No reward markers. basically a warning, you're on the wrong path. If you continue down this path, it's going to lead to bad consequences and punishment. So correct your course before that happens. Then we have duration marker, which again, a lot of people use good, whereas I just use the command. Because I'm like, hey, you're on plays, but I'm going to remind you of what you're doing, and then I'm going to reward you for continuing doing that. Also, a duration marker is also called a continuation marker. Release marker, hey, I'm allowing you to leave the position that you're in and go and do dog stuff, right? And again, I use release markers as not a reward marker. Like, you're not going to get anything from me, but you're free to go and do dog stuff. Bark at some birds, pee on some trees. Do whatever you find intrinsically reinforcing. But there's nothing coming directly from me. And finally, start and finish markers. Activate the dog into behavior. Open the window and say, hey, there's opportunity for us to have a good time now and for you to earn reinforcement. But then also remember to close it, to end it. And say, hey, there's no more reinforcement coming. There's no more opportunity. You can backflip off my chest at this point. I'm not going to reward you because I have closed the window. And that is important. When you have closed the window, even if your dog does something really cool, don't reward them outside of the window, because that can instill in the dog, hey, there's always an opportunity, even when dad or mum have said, no, we're done, we're finished. And yeah, if you are a trainer, use different commands than for your dogs than you teach your clients, because that prevents any form of overlap or confusion, and it makes it easier in your head as well, because you look at your dogs, you say one thing, you look at another dog, you say another. Just helps distinguish everything. And yeah, that's markers. That's how I use markers. I know there are people who have extensive marker systems, much more complicated than mine, but because I don't need it, like already this marker system that I use is more complicated than pretty much all of my pet dog clients need. And that is what I do. So keep it simple, keep it sharp, shut the hell up, and mark the behavior. Unless my dogs are under command, all I say to them is yes and no. That's it. And they have absolute clarity. They know exactly what I like them to do and what I don't like them to do. And we don't get into trouble anymore, because we speak to each other in such a clear, simple manner. So yeah, keep that in mind, everyone. Don't overcomplicate things. Always set the dog up to win. And set your non-verbal animal companion up to win by using as few words as possible. And when you use those words, make them as short, sharp, and distinctive as possible, and clearly combine them with known consequences. Boom. Now we can talk to animals. It's that simple. Awesome. All right. Hopefully I wasn't rambling too much. Again, like I said, it's been a hell of a time recently, and I am off to Norway in just under 2 weeks, and I'm just trying to get my fucking ducks in a row. And that's why everything's a bit chaotic. But yeah, got some really cool chats lined up. Stay tuned for that. Hopefully this was helpful. Any questions at all, you can always send me a message, leave a comment. But for now, teach your dog a marker word and then go train them. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beastly Talks. I hope you found it interesting and that you'll join me for the next one as well. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it so that more people can hear about it. Or if you think this particular episode would benefit a family member, friend, or colleague, be sure to share it with them directly. You can follow me on social media at Viking Dog Trainer on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you for your support and keep training your dog.